But this is the thing, right? Looking at all those levels of depths beyond the paradox, then you start seeing the matrix of the system. I spoke once about Nikola Tesla. Here you go. We're going to talk about some quotes from Nikola Tesla. Quote, "The desire that guides me in all I do is the desire to harness the forces of nature to the service of mankind," a quote by Nikola Tesla. And many people believe, I believe he also was raised in Serbia, a lot of people promote him there. I don't think he gets the credit that he deserves. Many people agree. But many people have also speculated, and we do know that a lot of his work was confiscated by the government because he found ways to create free energy simply through the earth. Everything's super free. Power our cars, power our houses, and everything, right from the earth's core. He had all the blueprints and knew how to do it, supposedly, before his death and all his work was stolen. So just keep that in mind as we move on here in this life, not just in this video. For any book and any video, the contents go beyond it. It matters what you choose to do with it. This is just a representation of knowledge to which you take action from it. And the action is also what I'm trying to help represent for people to make it easier, is by representation itself. And he's saying to harness the forces of nature. So he wanted to work more with nature rather than against it, rather than rule over it. And I can just only imagine how much inventions from creative people have the government stolen to advance their agenda, which isn't rooted in creativity. It's rooted in stealing from others, because that's what governments do. Everything they give to you has been stolen by someone else. Perhaps it is the same then for inventors and people who have come up with amazing things, because that's why I wanted to become an inventor, but I chose not to, because I felt like people, whatever I created, what could have been good or bad, people will turn it into something bad, and I just don't want that to happen. Now, there is a lot of creative potential. I still express my creativity through a lot of my works, but I don't even like to talk about myself. But this innovation can occur anywhere. It doesn't have to just be in new things. And the idea of energy like this doesn't have to go against natural law. I think it's a beautiful thing to see that we can have free energy, just like how we have free people and free everything, essentially, being that everything is free of the world. And definitely for what you want, though, there's always a cost. So the cost here is you must learn how to do it. The cost of keeping that knowledge is keeping it out of the hands of those who want to steal it. And using this knowledge rightly is also something that takes learning. So harnessing the forces of nature, even the forces of natural law, it takes learning to understand what natural law is. And then, by knowing these forces of nature and using them to our ability, they may serve mankind. So if we harness the forces, we understand the forces of nature, or natural law, or natural medicine, or nature's energy, it can serve mankind. It doesn't have to serve the governments to then serve mankind. It can just directly serve mankind. In fact, especially if mankind knows how to serve themselves with these forces, then, man, the great wonders we can do as well, right? And then that's why you see whistleblowers that come out and say, well, the public needs to know this, that's why I'm coming out and saying this. The public needs to know this because no one else is going to tell them. Quote, "It is hard to give unlimited power to limited minds," and this says it all. I quote by Nikola Tesla, and you'll see how he was a creative individual who spent most of his time alone, who perhaps spent time with nature. I mean, obviously it takes a lot of thinking, it takes a lot of understanding of the world around you and these equations and then connecting them together. I'm sure it takes a lot of mental work, which you don't necessarily acquire in the busiest of conditions like New York City or some crazy cars going here and all this noise happening. So he's saying it is hard to give unlimited power, right? Unlimited freedom, right? It's hard to give freedom to limited minds, to people who aren't open for change, to people who create controversy, to people who want government because they are limited minds, or to the government themselves because they want to limit. It is in their minds to limit. This is the problem. So you can't have this unlimited freedom, this unlimited happiness, this unlimited potential for humanity if everybody's limited by their mindset, by the very fact of having something rule over them that is in its nature a limit to the natural law. Something that is not there but is created in our minds as an illusion. He's saying minds explicitly here. In our minds is where we create this belief system of an illusion, of a boundary, to which our power, our empowerment of a human species, our willpower is then suppressed. Because we're giving it to the few and we're limiting ourselves from the potential, the unlimited potential that we actually have. He was one individual who found that, yes, we have unlimited potential. And guess what? He used it to know that we could have unlimited potential because he freed his mind. He freed his mind from all that because it allowed him to create. Once he frees his mind and realizes there's innovation to be sought, especially from what is present and from what we know, then we can then create for Shao anything we want to be unique. Quote, a single ray of light from a distant star falling upon the eye of a tyrant in bygone times may have altered the course of his life, may have changed the destiny of nations, may have transformed the surface of the globe. So intricate, so inconceivably complex are the processes of nature. A quote by Nikola Tesla. So him talking about tyranny, right? Are we surprised, being that he studied nature? Being that he knows how they may transform the world? But understanding nature is what allowed him to understand everything that he found. And which is also represented by this quote, him talking about how complex these processes are and how he's one person who can discover awfully a lot about it. You know, shall he put the effort and the willpower and all his conscious attention toward it, which he did. But that other people can do the same, and this complex process of nature is then perhaps simplified by the many people coming together to seek in simplifying it. Right? And by simplification, that doesn't mean creating government. That does not simplify nature. That is imitating and mimicking and kind of actually foolishly an excuse for nature because it's seeking to provide, when in reality nature provides us with all we need. So this quote saying, a single ray of light from a distant star falling upon the eye of a tyrant in bygone times may have altered the course of his life. So he's saying like any one occurrence could change someone's life forever. May have altered the course of his life, may have changed the destiny of nations, changing then the world in response, this ripple effect, this law of attraction, right, where it's starting to create this karma, this cause and effect, may have transformed the surface of the globe, so intricate it may be, right, so little it may be to just eliminate white flour out of your diet, or white sugars, or refined carbohydrates, and boom, you start seeing more, you start getting better health because you took the problems, the elephants out of the room, especially the elephant in the room out of the room, right? Because it wasn't supposed to be there, even though it's right there, and it's taking up so much space and it's heavy. So obviously, get it out naturally. Don't just all at once. But every step is a step in the right direction as you are putting your efforts and consciousness into it, but realize that every little step can make such a big difference in time. So talking to your neighbor, talking with each individual, you may think, maybe at first especially, that it's not going to do anything, but when you realize and you accumulate that through time, and you see the ripple effect that they then talk to their neighbors, and they then talk to their friends, and then they share it with their friends, it starts creating an effect that can literally change millions of lives on a daily basis, simply by such. And then you tell people, share the word. You believe this is important, share the word. So it's not like me plugging, saying like, okay, we'll share the message as the mission, as the movement. Like, I have to if I believe this is right, and if I believe that we can change the world, and the only way we can do so, actually, anyways, is by doing that. Now, if you don't believe me that, Tesla got a lot of his inspiration, a lot of his learning, his understandings from nature, as did every science, I can probably prove to you, and you can probably just think about, due to this creativity that comes of understanding nature. And actually, you kind of have to if you want to either manipulate or use nature to the benefit of the people. You see here, quote, "There is no subject more captivating, more worthy of study than nature. To understand this great mechanism, to discover the forces which are active and the laws which govern them, is the highest aim of the intellect of man." A quote by Nikola Tesla. The highest aim of the intellect of man is to understand natural law. Man, I mean, how much evidence do you need? We could just go through over and over and over again. No subject more captivating, more worthy of study than nature. I mean, this is just a perfect quote, again, to describe what's at play here. To understand this great mechanism, right? This great blueprint to life, essentially. And literally to life, if we are coming from evil. To discover the forces which are active, always active, what he's saying. Nobody can reverse them. And the laws which govern them, because there's natural laws that also are active and you can't take away. It's the highest aim of the intellect of man. The intellect of man, taking from this innate intelligence of the universe. And it makes sense, right, to understand the intelligence that exists to then become more intelligent ourselves in response, in this reflection, in this attraction, shall you say, right? So I'm sure this has a lot of influence upon his inventions, right? If you're attracting electricity, attracting certain energies and forces itself, you are automatically using the law of attraction, just in a different form, perhaps. Right, so life lessons, the secrets of the universe, he says here that, this is some knowledge from Tesla. Genius requires solitude. Be alone, that is the secret of invention. Then it says our mind is only a receiver. We just need to tune it with the universe. Makes sense what I've been saying, right? Putting it in alignment with nature, working with nature, for nature. And then it says genius requires solitude. Be alone. Well, yeah, because you're likely going to have better thoughts on your own. Not that you can't work with others, but you do need time alone because your mind can comprehend a lot by yourself. So there perhaps needs a healthy balance between alone and with others, and there definitely needs to be time for both, so you can see, well, maybe you are better alone in certain conditions or for certain things, in allowing you to innovate even more. I know certainly that one is definitely applicable to myself, right? So then it says, when somebody says it can't be done, do it anyways. So somebody says, oh, you can't unite the world. The world can't become a better place. Oh, government's always going to enslave us. There's no way out of it, even though it's as simple as not believing in statism. This is the problem. We can do it anyways. I'm not scared. The only thing limiting us is ourselves. So you must do it. I must do it. It is our moral obligation. If this is right, if this is true, in which case it is, we must do it. Then it says, money does not represent such a value as men have placed upon it. Is that any surprise to anybody listening to this? Money, the material good that isn't even good for us. I mean, it doesn't provide nutrition. It doesn't provide real value. It's just a representation of the fruits of our labor, right? But it doesn't even represent such a value that we even place upon it. Because why not the value itself? Right? Like we have this flag to represent, just for a starter bridge, but the value itself is in the knowledge, it's in the education, it's in the common sense. There's a step to this process. It doesn't just stop with the flag. The flag doesn't just end there. So that within itself is a material thing. It goes beyond that. But in order to perhaps give into this material world to help them see otherwise, we can help provide that. People are going to question, what is that? Well, material things don't belong here. We deserve to be among nature, and in the physical world, the spiritual world too. All the worlds at balance. Not one or the other, or overruling one another, or one crushing another, as it is. Okay, and you can tell people that. When they see this flag, they're going to be like, well, what is this thing? This flag for nature is the answer. Like, why would I have a flag? Well, it's like, because we need to represent and demonstrate to the powers that be and represent to others so that we all get on board what it means to actually be free, what it means to actually have a self-governing mechanism. Not just a government, but a self-governing mechanism, the self-government, because we control our own mind. It's not under the control of other people. So, just as money does not represent a value, the flag doesn't represent a value, but it's a bridge toward representing a value. I will surely use it, just as we will use the internet as a material use to help us bring ourselves to a different way. Again, our minds are the ones that are receiving all this. Our minds are the ones that are going through all this. That's what's going to matter here at the end of the day, is where we put our minds and what our minds are taking from this. So you can decide. The final point here says the future will evaluate each person according to his work. And what that means is, if you understand that, it's just reinforcing this idea of karma. That in the future, we receive this manifested reality of all the actions we've done of the past. All the actions that we're doing now, we will receive what comes of that in the future because it's been manifested and accumulated over time. We will see how we turn out because of what we've done. And then among the idea of solitude, it says here, quote, antisocial behavior is a trait of intelligence in a world of conformists, a quote by Nikola Tesla. Now that being said, there's an irony to this, right? Because you can be antisocial, you can be alone, but you could be wasting your time. You could still be distracting yourself with video games or Twitch or YouTube or whatever it may be. And you could be conforming to the many people who are then also doing the same because they're not using their intelligence, they're not using their creativity during that time, even though it could come of great use to them. And so, you can do things as simple as create music, create drawings, paintings. I mean, you realize that whatever you do has never been done before in the same exact way. This is how special you are as a human being, and they don't want you to know this special quality to yourself, this fascinating quality to what it is, because, they have this idea that everything must be proven right. Everything must be proven as right, even though they do not establish, what is objectively right and what is objectively wrong to just a natural world. But by right, they say it has to be through science, it has to be through this study and this clinical trial. Is that really where we want to put the right? Because it's not helping us if it's not in alignment with nature still. You cannot say science is in alignment with nature, although it could be, because Nikola Tesla is said to be a scientist, right? But I think a better word is just an inventor, somebody who is actually using their creativity. And for him, it was antisocial behavior, it was being alone. And in a world full of conformists, he was doing something that they weren't doing, perhaps, at his time. He was doing something that a lot of other people weren't doing, clearly by his inventions, right? So he wanted a lot of time to figure that out, because he knew that he could figure it out. So he put all his time toward it, perhaps. Okay, so look at this in two ways. Antisocial bad, antisocial good. It's not good to be alone and antisocial. Okay, but it's also good to be alone sometimes and be antisocial. I mean, there's always a time and place for everything, they say, right? Now, quote, of all the frictional resistances, the one that most retards human movement is ignorance, what Buddha called, quote, the greatest evil in the world, end quote. The friction which results from ignorance can be reduced only by the spread of knowledge and a unification of the heterogeneous elements of humanity. No effort could be better spent, a quote by Nikola Tesla. Now, He talks about the Buddha. We're going to go into depth about the Buddha as well. Okay? He says, of all the frictional resistances, the one that must... You see how he connects energy to truth. And this is the beauty of the world and understanding nature, is that he understood not just knowledge, but energy. And that's how he understood more about energy, is by connecting all these dots together. The fact that Tesla, you never would have thought someone, an inventor of many things, many people want to say that Edison stole his inventions for, creating energy and light and so forth. But, that most retards human movement is ignorance. And notice he says movement, right? Because the number one thing that's going to limit people in this movement is ignorance. Not saying, saying that they shouldn't do anything. Saying that, oh, it's fine, or other people will do it for me, or ignoring the problems in plain sight. Ignorance is the very, very problem. Remember, that is like the top thing that prevents people from action and from knowledge, from acquiring other knowledge and being open-minded alike. Critical thinking, common sense, all those things we talked about. We already talked about those. We saw how important ignorance was, and it's just, you see the same word over and over again. You see the same words over and over again. Do we learn from history? Okay? The friction which results from ignorance can be reduced only by the spread of knowledge. He says, only by the spread of knowledge. Awareness from that knowledge, right? Then the understanding, then the reasoning, then the common sense, then the action that comes from it. So understand, it's not just this knowledge, okay? This is the only thing I'd have to say, but the quote could only be so long, right? And knowledge turns into this other stuff. And that's what makes it particularly important. And you have to realize that when every step of that process is somehow denatured or interrupted or distracted, then it does make it harder, even if you are spreading knowledge, as the independent media has been doing. They've been doing it, and they've been effectively creating change through that way. Little do they know, they've been creating change. But is it enough change to change the agenda and the course of history of what the elites are doing to the world? And that's why I created my movement, is we can still have that knowledge, it can still promote the universal knowledge, but we still need a unification blueprint, a unification model. So even, let's say, if this blueprint isn't the best blueprint, even though I believe it is, this is still important information. This is still information that could potentially save many lives, right? So he says even the unification of the heterogeneous elements of humanity, and that no effort could be better spent, right? No effort could be better spent than promoting the truth, promoting what's of nature. And that's of humanity, because nature is of humanity, humanity is of nature. We are together here, we're all supposed to work together. This is the blueprint, this is how the world works. Okay, this is a quote by Nikola Tesla, again, because no effort could be better spent than promoting the truth, or seeking the truth, or finding ways of helping people find the truth easier and as they should do. We can teach our children, we can pass this for generations, we can find different ways of explaining examples. The amount of things we can do if we open our potential to, once we know what is truth and what is wrong, is amazing. So once we understand natural law, that can very well be the key to much of everything. As he represented, as we've seen from the past quotes, the law of nature is one of the best ways to acquire this knowledge. And just remember that he said it's the most captivating, right? The most captivating to study the laws of nature and understand everything about it. So he says, quote, the day science begins to study non-physical phenomena. Non-physical phenomena. You thought, okay, well, studying electricity, finding ways to invent things is physical? No, not necessarily. Again, irony. He then says, quote, it will make more progress in 1 decade than in all the previous centuries of its existence. A quote by Nikola Tesla, right? You figure out the truth to the world. Doesn't matter how long it takes you, it starts to live on for generations past your time. For all of time, it was worth it. And music is very much a universal language and could be passed on generation to generation too, right? Being that we have this technology, and more is now possible now, so it's a beautiful thing that we have. Really, it's beautiful. And it's beautiful, especially when you have a balance between technology and nature, not having one overbearing of another. You start to see, okay, well, everything is beautiful. I mean, just everything is beautiful. But when you're consumed by technology, then you don't really recognize nature. You don't give its way into your life, perhaps, right? It's something that just overtakes everything. And it's something that is too, because it's listening to you and it's collecting, and that's not something that is of nature. You know, nature may listen in different regards. Do you want to say to the laws of attraction? But we see how this cause and effect phenomena happens, and by understanding the world that we live in, we can really make this world a better place. So non-physical phenomena, what would that be then? Okay, maybe spiritual, maybe natural. I mean, we do have a picture of a plant in the background here, right? We will make more progress in 1 decade than in all previous centuries. And I do believe that we can do a lot in this 1 decade, especially if there is this thing called Agenda 2030 from now, which I'm making this video in 2020. So we can make a lot of progress. You know, people want to say even Congress is the opposite of progress. But that is often what government is doing, is this is preventing, if anything, our progress of human potential. Our potential in general to become healthier, become happier, to become our best selves, because we're limited by our freedoms. And our mindsets are then limiting us, and therefore we're limiting the actions that we can do. When you realize this beauty of opening yourself up, a lot of people don't talk about the beauty. Many people will talk about the phenomena, but the beauty of all of this and understanding, then you are motivated and you want to live in this world, and you have a reason and you have a purpose and you have a value. And I feel like a lot of people are losing that in a world of technology dependence, in a world of government overruling and people telling you what to do. For, like I said, even the education system is built on that, so it's no wonder why young folks are feeling such way, even though they're new to this life and should be full of creative inspiration and full of drive to want to do something. Wouldn't you think that would be the case? Perhaps in your day and age it was like that, but could you say then for this new generation that has appeared? See, and we can learn a lot through others, you know, through our reasoning abilities. And like, you know, to be honest, I thought of a lot of what has been said here from a lot of these quotes myself, just observing the world of nature. But I'm not just going to stick with, you know, what I said and what I think and stuff like that, because going back to all these people, it's like, wow, I mean, I could prove myself right, which is not something I always want to do, because I don't want to put myself in my own echo chamber. But if we can use other people, because this is not all, you know, we should people and understand that, I mean, it's amazing that these people came to the same conclusions as me in many ways, but, I mean, frankly, we can have everybody together. You know, this is not something where I have to put myself in the spotlight and say I came up with this and I said that. Like, this is not about that. This is about taking everybody together, regardless. This is a selfless. See, government wants to force you to act in alignment with their version of good, but it's not based on the objective version of good as presented by nature. And so you also can look at a child, right? And you can see, you'd say, well, okay, yeah, a child should be full of adventure, full of creativity, as they often are, actually, when left to their creativity and when left to their natural environments most of the time. They're like, wow, what a beautiful and vast world this is, like as if they were playing World of Warcraft for the first time. They say, this is an amazing world, I don't know what's in this world, I don't know what to expect, this is so cool. And then it's like, you do this quest line in World of Warcraft, or you do this thing in real life, and you're like, wow, that is so cool, I wish, you know, like, I want to just keep going and I want to see what's more out there. And that has been taken away from us, because our inner youth, even aside adults, the youth inside people and in adults, I mean, in children, I mean, it's been denatured, because you even see children having to live lives live their mentalities as if they are older than their actual age. You see there's hormones in the milk, you see there's antibiotics in the meats. and it's causing kids to grow up too fast, and their mind can't keep up, and then they have premature problems and the maturity problems, and the world just is not working in their favor. Their law of attraction is not working in their favor because nature is not working in their favor. Now they can still work it out through different environments, often of nature, but the denatured environment was what gave way to those bad environments or the bad things that happen. And of course, we can learn from the bad things, so it's not only bad. Remember, nothing's bad. You can always learn from experience. But the point is that they will denature a kid to where they have to work at an earlier age. They have to pay off college debt. They can't afford an apartment. They can't afford a car. They can't afford anything. They're more reliant on the government for their help. And then the Social Security is violated, and all this other stuff is here. And they don't learn a thing about economics in school. They don't learn a thing about common sense or critical thinking. Because that would help them challenge the status quo. That would help them escape this matrix that puts them in this load of debt, which is actually servitude, which is actually denaturing upon who they want to be. You know, these kids have to stay up late at night eating junk food, not sleeping ever, and this is their lifestyle for a good couple years. And as we know, small things make a big difference. Those years of their life makes a very big difference, and then they end up having to pay the debt while they're working those crazy jobs. And then you see all these billionaires did not go to school to get their degrees. You have to question the state of the world as to why it is the state of the world, and you have to question why kids are having bad thoughts. Kids, it's not even adults anymore. Or why kids are having obesity. It's not even adults anymore. Or why kids are having cancer. It's not even adults anymore. Because our denatured society has hit the roots of all things. Because even we see people who are born with a bad microbiome. That's what's contributing to the allergies, folks. That's what's contributing to the growing in disease. That's what's contributing to determine the rest of their life was determined at birth. Determined at the environments that child was born in, and how they were even taken out of the womb. Every stage of nature is a very important one, as we know the world is intelligently designed. So do we seek to understand that? Because then we know that a C-section birth could be very dangerous, for example. But oh, it's okay, because you're a C-section birth, so we gotta accept it and we gotta love it. That doesn't mean we promote it or promote it as something that we should do. Okay? You have the choice to have an abortion, but it doesn't mean it's right. You always have the choice to do whatever you want in this world, but it doesn't mean it's right. It doesn't mean it's of nature. You must ask these questions for yourself if you want to understand this world. And you must ask the old-timers too. Because the old-timers often know a lot that the new generations don't know. Because in the worst part is the old-timers aren't giving to the new-timers. The new-timers are not asking of the old-timers. So what generational sustainability are we offering or giving? You have this quote here from Nikola Tesla. My mother understood human nature better and never chided. She knew that a man cannot be saved from his own foolishness or vice by someone else's efforts or protests, but only by the use of his own will. A quote by Nikola Tesla. Again, he's not just an inventor, he had a mind of his own. Many people who create things in this life have a mind of their own because they see past this life. They understand how to create, and they gain the skill through practice of creation, which often involves critical thinking and common sense and knowledge. That they were able to comprehend and use such words to represent a greater truth. Our mother. What do we call even our mother? We call sometimes Mother Nature, right? But the mother is a very important character, especially in a left-brain dominant world where the sacred feminine is under attack, where women are being more masculine than ever, and men are being more feminine than ever, yet we have brain imbalances. irony, again, no balance, and there's so much distortion and so much ignorance of what's going on. So she knew that a man cannot be saved from his own foolishness unless he changed his mindset, unless he got to the root cause, blamed himself, pointed the finger at himself, and said, that is the problem, that's what must be changed if I want to change the world. And that is often of human nature if you're looking at that point of view. Might as well call me a creativity coach because that doesn't seem to exist. But I want people to be creative, and that's what's going to help us here, as we've seen time and time again, and through these quotes and through understanding these cycles. And this is perfectly also described by this quote here: my brain is only a receiver. In the universe, there is a core from which we obtain knowledge, strength, and inspiration. I have not penetrated into the secrets of this core, but I know that it exists. A quote by Nikola Tesla, acknowledging the existence of nature and the forever intelligence that exists within it. Saying that he's only a receiver, kind of like what I'm saying, right? We're only messengers. We're only listeners. We are only inhabitants of the world. That doesn't make us meaningless. I mean, I listed examples of why we are so meaningful and how much potential we have. And the fact that people don't see that beauty should make you actually want to see it more. Because these people are in the dark, and when you realize and you apply this beauty to your life, you see the beauty, and it starts manifesting, because again, you're attracting it. And so it's just this like, wow, okay, I see it, and so many other people do not. This continues me to strengthen my efforts and want to actually inspire others, not, through my works as well. So it's not just do my works, but also inspire others. And frankly, this is a lot of just inspiration, right? But he then says, I have not penetrated into the secrets of this core, but I know that it exists. He knows that there's natural laws. He knows that there are deeper underlying mechanisms to this world. And perhaps he cannot stand it all. For any one of us can perhaps not understand it all, but he has obtained knowledge, strength, and inspiration. Right? And he says that we obtain knowledge, strength, and inspiration from understanding the universe. In other words, nature. So his brain is a receiver to nature, to which, from learning from nature, he gets knowledge, strength, and inspiration. And he does not know every aspect of it, but he knows it exists. And he knows it works. And he knows what he gets from it. And that is the key here, the premises. Quote, through free to think and act, we are held together like the stars in the firmament, with ties inseparable. These ties cannot be seen, but we can feel them. A quote by Nikola Tesla. The fact that we use not just our heart, but our minds and our soul and our guts, okay? Through free to think and act, though. First off, being free. Once we are free, we are easily more able to do this. Okay? So, though free to think and act, because we already are, is what he's saying, we are held together like the stars in the firmament, with ties inseparable. Okay, we are still all connected. So even him saying, okay, antisocial, guess what? He still realizes that all of humanity is connected. He realizes that everything in nature is connected. And that my message even, right, is connected. And his ideas is connected to this greater truth. We're all connected here. So these ties cannot be seen, he says, but we can feel them. We can, if we use our heart, if we use our right brain, we can seek it. But we must use it. And if we're being prevented from using it, or we're being distracted or denatured from using it, you should probably think about it and start trying to find a way to use it, folks, if you actually want to create change in this world, because you have to start with yourself, as we know. And this just goes on and on. Quote, throughout space there is energy. Is this energy static or kinetic? If static, our hopes are in vain. If kinetic, and this we know it is for certain, then it is a mere question of time when men will succeed in attaching their machinery to the very real work of nature. A quote by Nikola Tesla, also forewarning us of how great of an ability humans can imitate the works of nature, and therefore illusion many people into thinking or having feelings alike nature that perhaps isn't. Okay, you have to keep that in mind, is that we are very good at understanding nature, the few, the ones that are creating, perhaps, or the creations that came from it of the past, that we don't realize what it could be doing to the many who don't understand it, who don't see it, who don't see what machineries are at work. And so they don't see that the machinery is just machinery. They see the machinery as nature. But nature is this bigger idea. It's the trees, it's the sun, it's everything. And so far as what we can see, that is still nature to many people. But their worldview is still being detached from that. And they are being distorted toward machinery, toward technology, virtual realities. It becomes their entire perception. Okay, so he says it's a mere question of time when men will succeed in attaching technology to nature. That doesn't mean it could be bad or good. It still depends on us and our minds, right? But we must understand that. If we don't understand that, then yes, that's when it will get out of control. But still, obviously, through addressing statism, we can address this big technological influence. But understanding the nature of technology would help, wouldn't it? Since we want to be so much among nature, right? So then, such is represented by this quote, talking about energy and how everything has an energy, everything has a vibration and a frequency, right? As he often says, and it's just a mere question of when machinery can imitate nature perfectly, or help us understand nature even more, right? Is it helping us or is it replacing us? There's a question between helping and replacing often with the case of technology. We see, quote, today's scientists have substituted mathematics for experiments, and they wander off through equation after equation and eventually build a structure which has no relation to reality. Quote by Nikola Tesla, debunking, again, from a scientist himself, just like the other scientists, what scientism does to us, what scientism is, and very dangerous as a left brain dominance. So today's scientists are often of the left brain dominance, and they have substituted mathematics for experiments. They wander off through equation after equation and eventually build a structure with no basis in reality, no basis in natural law, no basis in common sense or critical thinking or the greater picture or the spiritual laws of nature. That's why they don't pay attention to it, because it's spiritual. Okay? It's something that is the opposite of material things. And when they seek the spiritual, they realize material things are not worth it. Their job is then not worth it. So what was all the schooling for? Well, they have to do their job, so they have to stay within this material mindset. They don't want to escape it. So here's the thing, right? It has no relationship to reality to build a structure like this that is built around scientism and left-brain dominance. So what do we build? Well, we build a structure based on reality, a natural law based on what is here innately. And that is how we will then experiment and not just go equation, but actually connect the dots that exist within your universe for us to connect. It doesn't require this complex mathematical equation that we've built for ourselves, obsessed with numbers. And that brings us back to this quote on Albert Einstein. It says that we must free ourselves, widening our circle of compassion, to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature and its beauty, okay? Just again, to sum up everything that we've been talking about, bringing us back to that quote. And Tesla spoke of many things, quote, in no way can we get such an overwhelming idea of the grandeur of nature than when we consider that in accordance with the law of the conservation of energy, throughout the infinite, the forces are in a perfect balance, and hence the energy of a single thought may determine the motion of a universe. Quote by Nikola Tesla, again representing the power of the mind. Quote, then, our virtues and our failings are inseparable, like force and matter. When they separate, man is no more. Okay, Nikola Tesla is saying that there's this natural right and there's this natural wrong to the universe as well, as we've seen in correlation with the other philosophers here. Quote, peace can only come as a natural consequence of universal enlightenment, by Nikola Tesla. Again, everything we've been talking about is attaining peace at the utmost through this dangerous freedom that allows us to be self-sustainable and in the long term then help promote more peace than ever, because less harm is done, less violence is done. Violence will still be done, but it's trivial to that of government, the mass scale deception and the ones that hide things behind the scenes and let things go by in the worst of ways. Okay, so keeping that in mind, if he talks about peace here, he's saying it comes as a natural consequence of universal enlightenment. So the most people that have the most knowledge, therefore we can have the most peace. You know, if everybody has this ideal of common sense, and we obligate ourselves to through the natural law and living in accordance to nature, which means no government for the most part, we obligate ourselves to create common sense. We obligate ourselves to create critical thinking. But then through recommendation, through education, and having an actual education system that isn't funded by propagators and those who want to actually denature you, then you have a system where you can potentially very well become universally enlightened, and you have many fellow peers with you because people are more open to one another. They have to. And this is the beauty of the process that is of living more in accordance to our nature and natural law. It's just universal enlightenment that happens naturally, and with that, once the universal enlightenment is achieved, peace comes naturally. So it's a beautiful process, and of course there's cycles to it, but this enlightenment is just passed on generation to generation, and just different amounts in each generation, but the enlightenment still exists. I mean, it exists here as I'm showing you now. There's enlightenment of knowledge and wisdom to always be seen at all times. So when the world has this knowledge, this information, this transformation, not just information, this light away from the dark, being open, being aware, using consciousness, having willpower, just simply being human as they're supposed to be, in a world which they're supposed to live in, then the universal enlightenment takes place, so that peace can then take place. Thank you for watching this video. Feel free to subscribe, like, and do whatever you wish. It's up to you. You are free in this life, and if you want to know how to change the world truly, please, I encourage you to check out my website, Nita.1. It's here for all of us, actually. It's not my website. It is my website, but it isn't. It's here for us all. We're all messengers. We're all fellow human beings. Let's change the world truly, and we can do it with Nita.1. Nature's the answer.